Anyone who grew up with me through high school could probably tell you I was definitely a latchkey kid. Somebody who, my mom worked two jobs, worked during weekends. A lot of times we had the house to ourselves. And it was that way for years. I can't remember the exact age that really I was kind of home alone all the time. But I was the youngest of six siblings, so a lot of activity in the house all the time. Always had somebody older kind of hanging out. The youngest or the closest relative I have, the closest sibling I have, my brother Mike. He's about 2.5 years older than me. And then from there, we have two older brothers who are 11 and 10 years older than me, and then two older sisters who I think are like 15 or 16 years older than me. So there was always somebody there, right? At least somewhat somebody. My brother Mike being the closest to my age, we were regularly left home alone. But I'd love to hear from you out there. Were you a latchkey kid? And what do you think's the appropriate age to leave kids home alone? 217-629-7970. Again, 217-629-7970. And why I bring this up, there's a bill at the Illinois State House that would allow for kids as young as 12 to be left home alone. So as it is right now, this law is today, parents can be charged with neglect if they leave children under the age of 14 years old home alone, even for a short time. That law is already in effect, but State Representative Sue Shearer from Decatur, she says that she's ready to advance her bill out of the State House that would lower that age to 12. She said, I have a lot of constituents who've reached out to me about this. It's causing a lot of hardship on working families. Now, she expects to pass the bill, which is House Bill 4305. Again, House Bill 4305. You can read about this at ilga.gov. But she said that people that she's talked to about this say that they have a 13-year-old and they want to leave them home alone for a half an hour between when they get home from work and when the kids get home from school. It's very extreme the way that the law is written right now, she says. So what do you think? 217-629-7970 is the phone number. What's the appropriate age to leave kids home alone? Good morning. You're on WMAY. Hello. Wait, I got to push the buttons first. Good morning. You're on WMAY. What's up?
So I'd say that about 13 years old would be about a good age, since that's when I started being left home alone more often. Since, well, you're about 8th grade, you're learning to be more responsible and whatnot, and I think leaving you home alone is a good way of actually testing if you're that responsible and for your parents to trust you,
13, yeah. When I was 13 years old, I was, cooking for myself. I was doing my own laundry. But all of this was, in a sense, me as an individual being the baby of six, and having plenty of examples beforehand, right? I don't know the situation. Do you have siblings that were older than you, or were you a single child?
Well, I have a sister and two other adopted sisters, but that was after I was after 7th grade.
Gotcha.
But to be honest, my parents just raised me to be a lot more responsible, since they were both in the military and they know what all that routine and stuff is like. So they raised us with, that same sort of routine. But I can't say the same for everybody else. But I'd say that 13 years old, with how much trust is placed upon you and how much you're taught, that responsibility early on. I feel like about 8th grade, you're transitioning into high school, learning how to become an adult. So I'd say that would be about a good age.
So 13, appreciate the call on that, 217-629-7970. Let's hear from more of you out there. What's the appropriate age to leave kids home alone? 217-629-7970. Right now in Illinois, it's 14 years old. State Representative Sue Shearer wants to drop that down to 12. Good morning. You're on WMAY.
Morning, buddy.
Hey.
Hey, actually, the bigger question is, when was that law put in place?
Oh, geez. I mean, they amended it not too long ago. I can't remember what the age was beforehand. I want to say it was like under 18 or something like
Well,
that. But they did
for
recently amend that. Right now it's 14 years old, but they want to drop it down. At least State Representative Sushir wants to drop that down to 12.
okay, yeah, for me, it was definitely fifth grade or around 13 whenever I actually became a quote quote teenager officially.
Right.
So, but yeah, because my parents were under the one was the youngest in her fam. My mom was the youngest in her side, and my dad was the oldest boy. There was only one other above him and they were both family of six. So my dad was all for it, just leaving me home. He's like, I don't want to pay for daycare anymore, so just leave me at home. And as soon as I got out of school, I would get dropped off by the bus, just walk the block to the house,
Right.
and I'd be good for an hour and a half or two.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was that. But of course, my dad, he started driving when he was 9. So I mean, and it's no joke, Greg. He, being raised on the farm.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
he
how
had
it was.
Totally
different era.
every right to drive on private property, but he would always say, as soon as I hit the road, I'd have to let Dad take over and actually wait for him to come get the car. So,
Well, and I think one thing that, and I appreciate the call. We got full phone lines here, 217-629-7970. I think one thing that could be taken away so far from what I'm hearing is if your kid is responsible, if your child has regular chores, you can't do anything else unless the choring's done. Then they may be better off at home alone for half hour or an hour while you're waiting to get back home from work. But this is something that's going to be discussed, and I don't know if it's a one size fits all approach, right? Because I'm sure that there are plenty of 11-year-olds who are mature. I mean, like for instance, I was making pancakes for my brother's friends when I was 9 years old. I never burned the kitchen down. I was doing my own laundry when I was, in middle school, because I had to do my own laundry. It's just one of those responsibilities. But it's not a one size fits all approach, right? Good morning. What's the best age to leave a kid home alone?
Well, I mean, I would say probably 11 or 12. I mean, I think I was 10 when I became a latchkey kid, but I had 3 older brothers.
Yeah.
That made sure that I didn't get into any trouble or they beat the living snot out of me. I mean, they really did. They made sure that I followed the rules. Right. I was home when I was supposed to be. Was supposed to be in. Was supposed to be where I was supposed to be. I mean, that kind of fell through as I got to around 13. But
sure,
I can see a 10, 11-year-old, even an 11-year-old child being a latchkey kid. I was.
Yeah. No, I totally was. Myself and my brother, we were totally latchkey kids. Making our own food, doing our own laundry, making sure we got our homework done. I was probably a little bit more responsible because my older brother, he did drop out of high school, but he kind of taught himself computer programming. Now he's doing all right, but different approaches here. However, I could see. I mean, we did some stupid things back in the day. It wasn't like I was an angel. We did stupid things back in the day.
Yeah, I remember us throwing cherries into a swimming pool and clogging up the filter of our neighbor's swimming pool. We got in trouble for. I threw an egg through a window that crashed through the window, a raw egg.
Yeah.
Hit a guy's piano, and my dad had to pay to have the whole piano refinished.
That's too funny. I appreciate the call. 217-629-7970 is the phone number. What's the appropriate age? State Representative Sushir has a bill she wants to advance through the State House, House Bill 4305. And it could be advancing in the weeks ahead here to drop the home alone age from 14 to 12. So one of the experts in this field, a team manager with the Illinois Child Care Resource Service, Marie Cubes, she said that, children develop at different rates from one another. And it's something that you really got to take somewhat of an individualistic approach to.
It's so hard to put a limit on the age when you're thinking about 12-year-olds because they're so vastly different. Even 14-year-olds, I would even say, all the way up through 16.
And she said parents need to ensure that children left at home alone have phone numbers that they can call if they're lonely or potentially afraid.
If there's a fire or some circumstance happens, there has to be a safe place for them to go.
So your thoughts, 217-629-7970. I remember one time I was home alone. Oh, gosh, I want to say I was probably like 6 or 7 or so. And my older brothers, who were 17, 18 at that time, they weren't far away. It was kind of a close, tight-knit neighborhood. They ended up calling the house, pranking, saying that somebody's watching. Oh, just scared the bejesus out of me when I was a kid. That's all older brothers were good for was torturing younger brothers. But they would do prank calls, and it got to the point where I'd call my mom, who was at the hospital doing her nursing gig, and let's just say very formative experiences, that's for sure. 217-629-7970. Good morning. What's the appropriate age?
Good morning. I don't know. I wouldn't know the age exactly, but it was about 5th or 6th grade when I became a latchkey kid. But the law isn't bad, because if you really think about it, these new millennials and Zers, they don't leave the house anyway, and they sit in front of a computer, so they're not going to get into too much trouble to begin with.
But
So
should they be able to hang out with each other? Should these millennials be able to hang out? Because this expert,
no, they don't want to
Marie,
leave the house. They don't want to leave the house, Greg. They sit on there and want to do social media, and send pictures back and forth to each other. That's the thing. So
well, that can also lead to some problems
they're totally
too.
content with that,
Yeah.
But the real law should be force them to leave the house for a couple hours a day. I mean, when's the last
Go
time
outside. I don't want to see your face. I don't want to see your face until sundown. All right,
That's
you
what
go
we
out
used
there
to
and you
hear.
exert some of that energy.
Yes, that's what we used to hear. Get out of the house. I don't want to see you.
I love it. No, it's good. That's good. I think you can find a lot of bipartisan support for that idea that kids are required to go outside and get some exercise and some extracurricular activities. But some of the other tips here from Marie Cubes, again, she's an expert in childcare. She said that parents need to decide on this issue on when to leave kids home alone on an individual basis for each child, because children mature at different ages. Also, parents need to prepare their children to be left at home alone. And one thing that you might not want to do is have kids be allowed to have their friends over, because unsupervised, and I'll be the first to tell you this, unsupervised peers can get into a lot of trouble. That's for sure. So appreciate the conversation on this. It's good to go back into memory lane a bit. Somebody on Facebook says they moved to Illinois, from Illinois to Texas when they were in kindergarten. And at the time, you could be 4 in Illinois and go to school. In Texas, you had to be 5. This helps me remember how young I was when I first remember being left home alone. At 4 years old, parents thought it was completely okay to leave me at home so they could go out to dinner. I remember being fine with it and enjoyed jumping on and down on the mattresses of the living room floor and watching the Bad News Bears on TV. He survived, he says. As a parent of 4 teens, he says, I think 12 is a perfectly acceptable age for kids to stay home alone. It also depends on the child and how much you can trust them. So, yeah, good input there from social media. And you can always chime in, email me, however you'd like. Just search out Bishop on Air, and you can make that happen here on the WMAY Morning News.